Hello everyone, welcome to what I think is probably going to be the third dev vlog for Banter Bus. It's been a while since I've recorded one. I had one ready, the GitLab CI one, which I didn't release for a while. I was out, I had a couple of conferences I was going to and various other things. So I know I wanted to make these like pretty regularly so I could like kind of update about Banter Bus, and also kind of it would help keep me a bit more honest, so to speak, so I'd feel like I was actually working on Banter Bus, but as you can imagine with life, there's always various little distractions. Anyways, this one we're going to talk about Playwright. So Playwright, very similar to tools like Cypress or Selenium, lets you kind of run tasks from the browser, and I believe it's a tool from Microsoft predominantly for testing web applications. So you can test things like, hey, click on this button, select this input, put this in, etc, etc, and so we can kind of test this Banter Bus application as if we're a user, or as close as we can as if we're a user, and we can write these tests from kind of the user perspective of what an end user might do, and make sure from that perspective it's all working. So if we take a look, if I run one, don't worry about the specific command here, but I'm just essentially making it less noisy, disabling logs, turning off headless mode. In headless mode, it's going to run it won't run the browser, or we won't see the browser. And this is just a fancy test runner, which I think I've spoken about before. And these are just the regular commands arguments we would pass to Go test normally, and then the format I want it to output for Go test. I just find this a bit easier to read than Go test, even though it's another tool, but we'll see. I'm using it for now. So if we run this, I think it's got cache, so I think we can do count equals 1. Yeah, that forces it to not cache the test. As you can see, it's now spinning up these browsers, and it's doing stuff. It's getting a bit stuck, I guess. I need to work on some of these end-to-end tests. I'm not super proficient in Playwright, but you can see it's opening up the browsers, and it will be doing the various steps, and it looks like everything's passed, which is quite nice. So in this case, I'm going to show you how you can set up with Nix, which won't really surprise you. All my videos kind of involve Nix, because it's a little bit more hands-on with Nix. So with Nix, what we want is, I found this, let's just see if I can get this. As I said, these are not going to be as well organized as other videos, so hence a bit more rambly. But yeah, so I found this project, Playwright Webplate, which updates itself whenever Playwright is updated. And so you can see last week they've updated to version 1.49.0, and it just gives you a bunch of instructions how we can set Playwright with Nix in our Nix Flakes. So you can take a look at that and follow that if you'd like. I'll show you very quickly how I've done it. So I've added Playwright, so that project I just showed you with a specific tag here. So I'm using 148.2, and that tag basically matches what I have in my Go mod file. So you can see here roughly that's the same version of this playwright-go library I'm using. I don't really want to write JavaScript, because Playwright itself, you would typically write the tests in JavaScript, but there's this wrapper library you can use in Go, which I think just spins up a node server and runs Playwright itself behind the scenes, but it's abstracted away from us, so I don't really care. So yeah, we have this playwright-go that I guess the community has built, and we can just use that, and essentially I just have to keep these in sync. These two versions. It's probably okay if they're a little bit different, but I just like to keep them in sync, so that's why I have this here. So this Playwright Webplate only gets updated when I update my dependencies here, and I've set up Renovate Bot, which we'll take a look at in another vlog, but that will update my dependencies automatically. It runs once a week, and it'll update my dependencies, which is quite nice, without me having to really worry about it. So yeah, that's kind of what we're doing. We're using the Playwright-go library, and we're going to use this wrapper kind of flake that we found. Then when you want to add it to your overlay, and you want to make sure we set up here playwright test, playwright driver. I'm not super like, even though I've been using Nix for a while, I'm not like super proficient with the syntax, so I roughly know what this is doing, but I don't know it super well. Because of the Flake utils helper library here, we don't have to specify the system here. I think it just works it out from our machine, and so it also makes it so it can work on other machines as well, which is quite nice. Specifically architectures, like my machine is an x86 64 Linux machine, but someone could use this on Mac, an Intel Mac or a ARM-based Mac as well. But yeah, so we wanna have access to these two packages: playwright driver, playwright test. Then if we come down here, I've updated my stuff a little bit here so that my dev shell installs playwright test. And then this is what gets installed into my dev shell, and also the Docker image that I use on CI. I didn't want to bloat the Docker image with playwright test. I may go back and add that in. I haven't quite worked out how I want to run playwright on CI yet, but yeah. So essentially, playwright test at the moment, I only have it release up locally. Or this specific package anyways, and then that basically gets us access to playwright, this binary here. If we do this playwright, you can see it, and you can see that version 148.2 like we expect. So that's basically all we need really to get started. I recall if we go to shell.nix, I don't think there's anything here. It looks like I'm specifying GitLab CI here as well, which I didn't need to, but anyways, that's something I can fix later. So yes, that's basically all we need to get playwright working in our development environment, in the sense that we can do, we can now, once we load into our development environment as a Nix develop or Durham, however you do it, you can now find the playwright binary. So that's cool, that works. When it comes to actually running the tests, one of the things we need is to install these dependencies, like our browsers and various other tooling that Playwright is going to need to, actually start a browser and do all the communication it needs to. And most of this is, I think, configured. Yeah, it's configured in our shell.nix, and essentially these three environment variables, I think these two are from the documentation of that web flake we were talking about, and then these two I'm just setting so our Go library, the community Go library that we saw, can use them. Particularly this one's quite important, the playwright driver bit here, because essentially what it does is the playwright driver library expects the playwright Go library expects us to expect specific files in a specific path. So if we do echo $playwright, if we go to the driver path here, if we just go to this folder, cd package, if we just look at that, yeah, so essentially if we do actually an ls on package, essentially the playwright community Go version, the dependency I showed you, my Go mod file, expects in package JSON CLI.js to be available. So that's why we need to give it this driver path here. And they recently, I had an issue for this on that repository, GitHub repository, and they recently went and fixed it. So that was really cool of them to go and do, not fixed it, but made it more flexible, so we can specify this using this environment variable here, this playwright driver path. So we can just set the driver path, and it just expects it to be package CLI.json available. And that's essentially what we need. So that was kind of the missing piece of me being able to run this locally. And that's pretty much it in terms of setup. We just need to kind of export these environment variables, and again, playwright Node.js path. I believe this again is used by that playwright-go community version, because it needs to know where Node is in our system, and in this case I want it to just use the one I specify in this development environment rather than using a globally installed one, because that's the whole point of having this development environment. And then this is just the browser stuff we were talking about, and just telling Playwright you don't need to download any browsers, they're already available. So these two, I think, again, that flake I showed you earlier, and then these two are specifically for the Playwright community version. So if you're using the Go, that same Go library, you will probably need to set these two as well to make it work. So that's basically that. Let's take a look maybe quickly at my task file, and we can see if we look at end-to-end tests, you can see I have this folder. I'm not really sure what the best way to do it in Go, so I've just created a folder at the root level called tests end-to-end, and we just run it like any other tests. And these are where the Playwright tests actually exist. So if we go to tests end-to-end, and if we go to like start game, I'll show you the setup for this in a little bit, but we can see we're using this Playwright community Go library that we're talking about, and as you can see, we are just telling. So I've got some helper functions to like set up the room state for me, so I don't have to keep repeating code in tests. So just say these two players, set up two instances of the browser, and say make sure these two players join the room, like a room's created and they join it. Then we say the other player should be ready, the host player should be ready, then hit start game, and then we should see this visible on the screen. I can make the test better, but I just want to get something basic and then improve them as I go along. So we just say round one out of 3 should be available, and there shouldn't be any error. And then I'm just writing these tests as if I would any other of my the rest of my Go tests, to be honest. I like to use subtests, and yeah. So and then there's another one here, being able to submit an answer, and so we can see we've got an input here, and we say fill in this input with this value. So yeah, that's basically how we have those set up. Also got a bit of a cleanup task, so we get a new browser instance basically every time. And if we come here, I've got this really kind of complicated setup. So we've got a test main function here, so this will run before all of our tests and make sure that the setup is run, and then after all the tests we do some teardown stuff, and then this bit here is what will actually execute our tests. So before all, we want to run Playwright. We will specify the browser. I copied some of this from the Playwright community example repo, and probably I can tidy this up as well. This is again the headless stuff, what browser options we want, what options we want to pass to it. We create this assertion here as in wait for I think 1,000 milliseconds. By default, when we do assertions, or we can do expect with Playwright. That's fine. And then we just set up this test server, which is basically just setting up my like essentially my version of main.go. I was thinking about this. Maybe it's better to test like actually starting the web server and then running tests against an actual running web server, because then I'm testing the main.go part as well. Though this is almost there. This basically is just almost a duplicate of main.go, which is basically just doing all the setup, all the dependency injection, all that other stuff. You know, using Redis, for example, to make my servers managing the WebSocket connection stateless. So if one server dies, another one can come up. Because I'm deploying on Kubernetes. I've got some internet localization stuff, internationalization, which I'll probably do a video about how I set that up as well. And then we just spin up a simple test server, which again is essentially web server, is essentially what we're doing in our main.go file. And if we see main.go, you'll see it looks like quite similar. It does a few more complicated things with logging and config and some auto stuff, but it's basically the same for all intents and purposes. Again, I kind of like the idea of end-to-end tests running against the actual running application rather than it spinning up its own like little web server, but for now this is plenty good enough. And then we've got some stuff so it can run in CI because in CI, GitLab CI, this will be Docker, not localhost, so we need a way to be able to set that. If we have an environment variable, but yeah, this is just essentially a bunch of sep like that, and it sets up the browser context as well, where I think a context is basically, you can just think of it as a page. So like here, player browser context, and we have one for each of the players. So one of the reasons when I was doing one of the rewrites of Banter Bus, I couldn't use Cypress at the time, was because I couldn't have multiple users, and for a browser-based game, I need a way to test multiple users. At the moment, I've kept it pretty simple with just 2 users, but probably to test the game more realistically, I'm going to need 4 users or something similar like that, right? Like 4 or 5 or 8 or whatever the game mode, though that adds its own complexity. But essentially, yeah, we're giving each user their own page and their own browser context, and we kind of reset these between tests, so they basically get a blank page. And then I think if we look at our this reset function here, essentially just creates these new contexts, creates these new pages, and then just takes the user to said page. Yeah, just go to the web server ready to go, and then the test will run. And then we also record videos, so if something goes wrong, it's easier to see. So if we come to videos, I mean, we won't be able to play them, but you can see. I should probably clean this up, but we can with oil.nvim, which is quite nice. Really nice plugin for NeoVim. But yeah, so that's basically how we set Playwright. And then yeah, if I do task test, I need to go back to Banter Bus. And then if I do task test, you can see that I think it's again just cached the previous result. Can I do? I wonder if I've set up my. Nah. Oh. Yeah. Okay, it's running them again. This gets quite noisy because I have debug level logging on, and I log the message I send back to the client, which, because again I'm using htmx, you're going to see all the HTML being sent back, and that's why it looks so messy. And those of you who are more eagle-eyed, you may have noticed I have a quiet version here as well, and that will also it's called quiet, but then it has headless mode off, so I don't know how quiet that is, but that's just more for hiding some of the output of the logs, so I can just make it easier to see what's failed. And this stuff here, probably something I need to look at with the tests themselves. They are a little bit flaky, as all good end-to-end tests are, it seems. But yeah, that's essentially how I've set up Playwright. Don't really have to write any JavaScript. Again, I'm predominantly a back-end developer, so I'm more than comfortable writing everything in Go. And so I have a bunch of these, you know, tests here, and I just write them as if my Go as if they're Go tests. And essentially, yeah, the Playwright library here just handles running them in the browser for me. And I don't have to do too much. It was just a bit fiddly getting it working the very first time, particularly around this driver path variable when it wasn't available to us, and this stuff was kind of hard-coded with that Playwright Community Go version. And then if we take a very quick look at GitLab ci.yaml, and then if we take a look at the end-to-end tests, I don't have these again running as I do my other jobs, where if we look at like the unit, the integration test here, you can see, you know, I'm using there's not much here because I'm using an image, the image that I generate myself using Nix, but here I'm using the official image for now. And then we have to do a few things like Nix develop C, which can take a little bit of time because it has to install, this is basically running the development shell, so it has to install all those dependencies. My Docker image with Playwright test was, I think, like 3 gig, and without Playwright it's about 1 gig or something, which is still a big, but I don't think it makes that much of a difference. I might put Playwright test again and just do a bit benchmarking on GitLab CI and just see how long it takes to run. But for now, I'm mostly happy with this because this still provides a pretty consistent experience. See, I've even left that to do here to, you know, avoid having to install dependencies every time with Nix develop, but it's pretty much the same as all my other tests. except it's just running on Nix as Nix. But this should still provide a consistent experience, because as in locally and in CI, because we're doing Nix develop. So yeah, if we take a look at perhaps a pipeline, I'm just going to move one of these over here. Again, I could have been better prepared with this, so apologies, but these are supposed to be easier to make videos. So again, if we just take a look at the logs of this test, what we will see, we'll see a lot of output, but if you look when we run this Nix develop, we do a lot of copying from the official cache, because we're just installing a whole load of dependencies, and you know, it's not the end of the world, but it just adds a bit of time. Let's see how long this takes. 2 minutes 56 seconds, and they are end-to-end tests, so they are inherently going to be a little bit slower than like integration tests. But if we take a look at the integration tests, they take how can I see? Yeah, they take about half the time, and I think a lot of that will be they don't have to install dependencies really. I still need to probably work out why I'm still installing Go dependencies rather than just using a cache, but that's like quite a minor thing, I think, compared to the installing dependencies, the Nix dependencies every time, or the Nix packages every time, which I think used to take quite a long time. But yeah, that's basically, I think we've gone over CI, we've gone over how we do it locally, and we've gone over how we write tests. So that's kind of how I've set Playwright to do some end-to-end tests of my project.